I woke up with a jolt, my head pounding like a drum. My pulse was erratic, and for a moment, I didn't know where I was. The room was quiet, too quiet. I rolled over to my side of the bed, my hand instinctively reaching for her. But all I found was cold, empty sheets. Something in my gut twisted. I turned, staring at the clock, trying to shake off the fog in my mind. It was almost 4 a.m. The night had never felt so long. Her side of the bed was always warm, always familiar. But tonight, it felt like a stranger's space. The absence of her presence hit harder than I expected. That sense of dread, that nagging feeling, it was like a weight pushing down on my chest. My thoughts flashed back to the evening before. The dinner at our favorite restaurant, the way she barely looked at me as we ate. She'd been distant for weeks now, but tonight something felt off. Her laughter didn't sound the same. Her smile was thinner, forced. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things. After all, we'd been together for 22 years. Marriage wasn't always easy, but we made it work, right? That's what I told myself. But tonight felt different. I pushed myself up from the bed, swinging my legs over the edge. My feet hit the cold hardwood floor, sending a shock up my spine. I rubbed my face, trying to push through the fog of sleep. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house. The air felt still, thick with tension. Her presence was supposed to fill the space, but it was empty now. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. No new messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I looked at the screen, seeing only her name at the top. I dialed her number instinctively, hearing the dull ringing in my ear. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Panic hit me for the first time. Where the hell was she? I ran a hand through my hair and walked to the living room. The silence was suffocating. I stood in the middle of the room, my mind racing. There was no sign of her, no purse, no jacket, nothing that suggested she'd even been here tonight. I went back to the bedroom, searching for some sign, some clue. But nothing. I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding louder with every step. The front door. Was it locked? I had no idea. I pulled it open, stepping outside onto the porch, but there was nothing. The driveway was empty. Her car was gone. I stood there, staring at the darkened street, the world outside as still and lifeless as the house behind me. The streetlights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the pavement. I glanced back at the door, half expecting her to walk through it at any moment. But nothing. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Why wasn't she here? Where the hell had she gone? My mind began to spiral. Had something happened to her? Was she in trouble? I pushed the thoughts aside. There was no sign of a struggle. No broken windows, no mess. But the dread was gnawing at me, relentless. I dialed her number again, this time trying to control the shaking in my hands. It went straight to voicemail, like it had before. I hung up, staring at the screen. Something wasn't right. I tried to think logically. She had to be at someone's house, right? Maybe a friend's place. But no. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was worse than that. I sat down on the porch steps, my mind racing. A million thoughts hit me all at once. The late-night work calls. The strange messages on her phone. The times she'd seemed distracted. All of it came flooding back, but I had refused to acknowledge it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe it. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, and I couldn't look away. I went inside and grabbed my coat, my hands moving almost mechanically. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I knew one thing for sure: I needed answers. I had to find out what was going on, where she was, what she was doing. Something was off, and I wasn't going to sit idly by anymore. I didn't know how I would do it, but I was going to find out. I didn't care if it meant digging through her things, asking questions, or confronting her. I had to know. I drove around for hours, the streets of our neighborhood slipping by in a blur of headlights and shadows. I checked the places she used to go. The grocery store. The gym. Nothing. No sign of her. No sign of anyone who could tell me where she had gone or what was happening. My stomach twisted with each passing minute. I felt like I was on the edge of losing everything. Eventually, I ended up outside our old cafe, the one where we had our first date. I parked the car and stared at the building, the neon sign flickering faintly in the window. I'd been here so many times with her, talking about our dreams, our hopes. It used to be our place. Now, it felt like a distant memory, a relic of a time that was slipping away from me. I pulled my phone out again. No messages. No calls. I opened the messaging app and typed a quick message to her, "Where are you?" I hit send, but before I could even put the phone down, it buzzed. A new notification. I stared at the screen for a moment, my heart pounding. It was a message from her, but the words sent a chill down my spine. "I'm not coming home tonight. I'm done, Jonathan." I blinked, reading the message again. It didn't make sense. Done? What the hell did that mean? My fingers trembled as I typed a response. "What are you talking about?" The response came almost immediately. "I'm with him. It's over." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Him? Who was him? I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was reading. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I wasn't ready to accept it. I had to know more. I had to understand. And that's when the realization hit me. She wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving me for someone else. My mind raced. Who? Who could she be with? Was it someone I knew? I slammed the phone down on the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Anger and confusion surged through me, but there was something else, a cold, biting realization. She wasn't just gone. She was gone with someone else. The betrayal was so raw, so immediate, that I couldn't even process it at first. My heart hammered in my chest as I fought to keep control, but the rage began to rise, hot and fast. I was done being the fool. I was done being the man who just sat back and let this happen. I would make them both pay. And I knew exactly where I was going next. I drove through the streets with a single purpose in mind, my hands gripping the wheel so hard that my knuckles ached. I wasn't sure where I was going, but the direction didn't matter. All that mattered was one thing, making them pay for what they had done to me. The realization hit harder than anything else. She, my wife, the woman I had trusted for over 2 decades, was with someone else. Not just anyone. Him. My best friend. The man I had shared my life with. The one person I thought I could always rely on. And now, I had lost both of them. I couldn't stop seeing the message. The words burned in my mind, "I'm with him. It's over." My chest tightened with every thought, but I knew that staying still, sitting in my car like a victim, wasn't an option. I needed answers. I needed them to feel what I was feeling. The betrayal, the rage, it all had to go somewhere. The pain in my stomach was replaced by a growing sense of resolve. This wasn't just about getting even. This wasn't just about retribution for the lies and deceit. No. It was deeper than that. This was about justice. A twisted form of it, maybe, but justice nonetheless. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let this simmer for too long. The longer I waited, the more I'd lose control. And losing control was never an option. I pulled into a parking lot, the headlights of my car cutting through the darkness. It was the same lot where I had met Brad countless times. I'd known him since college, and he had been more than just a friend. He was family. We went through everything together, drunken nights, late-night talks about our hopes, about our lives. But now, the reality of what had happened, the depth of the betrayal, was sinking in. I picked up my phone and dialed his number, the same number I had dialed 1,000 times before. It rang once, twice, and then, voicemail. I cursed under my breath and tried again. Nothing. What did I expect? That he'd answer and apologize? No. That wasn't how this worked. There were no apologies in this world, just consequences. I threw my phone down on the passenger seat, the weight of it thudding in my chest. Every second of silence made me angrier. How dare they? How could he do this to me? How could she? I thought about what I could do next. I could confront them both, demand answers, scream at them, make them feel the full extent of my anger. But that wouldn't be enough. I wasn't interested in a simple confrontation. I wanted something more. Something deeper. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to hurt them in a way that would matter. I couldn't just confront them, I had to ruin them. I had to make them feel as small and insignificant as they made me feel. The car door slammed shut as I stepped outside. I didn't know where I was headed, but I needed to make a plan. I had to think carefully about what came next. One wrong move and I'd lose the element of surprise. The cold air hit me as I walked into the nearby bar. It was one of those dimly lit, quiet spots where nobody asked questions. Perfect. Inside, I scanned the room, spotting a couple of familiar faces. But I wasn't here for company. I was here to think. I needed someone on my side. I needed someone to help me figure out what to do next. I approached the bar and ordered a drink. I didn't bother making small talk with the bartender, just paid, took the glass, and found a seat at the corner booth. Alone. I sat there for a while, staring into the glass, swirling the liquid. It wasn't the alcohol that I was after. It was the clarity. The focus. I thought about Brad again. How could he do this? The question kept circling in my mind like a broken record. I'd known the man for so long, shared so many personal moments. We'd been through hell together. And this is how it ended. With a betrayal like that? I felt a wave of bitterness rise in my chest. I wanted him to feel that same bitterness. I wanted him to know that there was nowhere he could run. Nowhere to hide. The consequences were coming for him, whether he liked it or not. And then there was her. Katherine. My wife. The woman I had loved with every part of me. The woman I had promised to grow old with. She had torn my world apart in one simple message. I didn't even know if she was still with him. She could have been home by now. Or maybe she was still out there, somewhere. I had to find her. I had to confront her. I needed to see the look in her eyes when she realized that I knew what she'd done. But first, I needed more. I needed a way to make this hurt, really hurt. A confrontation wasn't going to do it. I had to plan this carefully. Every move, every decision, needed to be calculated. I finished my drink and stood up, walking out into the night. The chill hit me again, sharp and biting. But it felt good. It grounded me. I knew what I had to do. I had to get closer. I had to gather information, find out where she was, where they were. And then, I would make them both regret the day they crossed me. I wasn't going to stop until they understood the full price of betrayal. I had nothing left to lose now. As I walked to my car, I didn't look back. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't the guy sitting by and waiting for answers. I was going to make my own answers. And nothing, was going to stop me from getting what I deserved. This was just the beginning. The next few days were a blur of anger, strategy, and sleepless nights. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, but I knew that if I was going to make them pay, I had to stay focused. This wasn't about recklessness. This wasn't about just reacting. This was about calculating every move, planning each step, and making sure that when it was all over, they'd feel the weight of every decision they'd made. The house felt empty without Katherine. Every corner reminded me of the life we had, and now, it was all gone. I could still smell her perfume in the hallway, hear the soft hum of her voice in the kitchen. It was like a ghost had taken over, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered dream. But I wasn't going to sit around and wallow in self-pity. I had a mission now. A purpose. I knew Brad's habits better than my own at this point. We'd been best friends for years, and his routine was as predictable as sunrise. He worked at the same law firm, grabbed lunch at the same diner every Thursday, and usually spent his evenings at the gym. I had to use that. I had to get close again. I needed information, and I wasn't going to get it by sitting on the sidelines. I started with the gym. He'd always gone in the evenings, after work, to blow off steam. I wasn't sure if he would be there, but it was the best place to start. I didn't even know what I was going to say when I saw him, whether I'd confront him right there or just gather information and wait. But I couldn't keep waiting. I had to act. The gym was quiet, the faint sound of weights clinking and the hum of treadmills filling the air. I spotted him almost immediately, lifting weights at the far end of the room. He hadn't changed much, still the same Brad I knew all these years. Still the same guy who had shared my victories and failures, my highs and lows. But now, I felt nothing but resentment and betrayal. I lingered near the entrance, watching him for a moment. I wanted to rush over there, grab him by the collar, and scream in his face. But I knew better. No, I had to play this cool. I had to keep my distance and wait for the right moment. As I walked past him, I gave him a casual nod, hoping it wouldn't seem too obvious. I wasn't sure if he'd even notice me at first, but when I made my way to the locker room, I could feel his eyes on me. There was a brief moment of recognition, a flicker of guilt, maybe, but I wasn't sure. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was one step closer to finding out what had happened. The plan was simple: get close. Get answers. And when the time came, strike. I stayed at the gym for an hour, watching him from a distance, waiting for the perfect time. The thought of confronting him right then and there was tempting, but it would have been a mistake. I needed to wait, to think. I needed him to slip up. And then it happened. As he was leaving, he stopped by the front desk to grab his things. That was when I saw it. His phone screen lit up as a message came through. It was quick, too fast for him to notice, but I caught the name on the notification. Katherine. I froze. The breath caught in my chest. So it was true. She was with him. The confirmation hit harder than anything else. I kept my distance as I made my way out of the gym, my mind racing. This was it. I had the confirmation I needed. I wasn't imagining it. She had left me for him. But that wasn't enough. I couldn't just know the truth. I needed to make them both feel the pain. I needed to make them regret every moment they thought they could get away with this. The next few days, I kept up the charade. I kept my eyes on Brad, watching his every move, trying to stay as inconspicuous as possible. I dug deeper into his social media, watching for any sign of where he and Katherine were meeting up. I knew I needed more details, more information. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. But it wasn't just Brad who I needed to watch. Katherine had made her choice, and now I had to find out what that meant. I didn't just want answers from Brad. I needed to know everything: how long this had been going on, how deep the betrayal went. I started digging through her things. Her closet, her drawers, her phone, anything that might give me a clue. Every time I found something, every text, every hidden message, it felt like another piece of my soul was being ripped away. But I couldn't stop. Not now. One night, as I sifted through her old journals, I found something that made my heart skip a beat. A letter. It was addressed to me, but it wasn't the kind of letter I had ever expected. It was dated a week before she left. I opened it slowly, my hands shaking. The words blurred at first, but as I read, the world around me faded. "Jonathan," it began, "I can't keep lying to you. I know you've sensed something. I know you feel it. But there's no easy way to say this. I've fallen in love with someone else. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't live a lie anymore. It's over." The words burned through me like acid. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. She had been planning this. She had been planning to leave for months, and I had been too blind to see it. I felt the fury rise up in my chest, the blood in my veins boiling. How dare she? How dare she betray me like this? But the most gut-wrenching part wasn't the letter. It wasn't the fact that she'd fallen for someone else. No, the hardest part was realizing that Brad, my best friend, had been the one she turned to. The one who took everything I thought I had. I sat there in the dark room, the letter crumpled in my hand. I couldn't think, couldn't focus. The only thing I knew for certain was this: I was going to make them pay. And this time, there would be no turning back. The hunt had begun. I wasn't the kind of man to show weakness. I wasn't the kind of man who let emotions get the best of him. But this was different. The betrayal ran deeper than anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't just her leaving me for someone else. It wasn't just Brad, my best friend, betraying me. It was everything I had ever known being ripped away. My life, my identity, my very sense of security, gone in an instant. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I wasn't about to sit in a corner and cry over what they had done to me. No. I was going to make sure they paid for what they had taken from me. The letter Katherine had left behind had confirmed everything I needed to know. She had been planning this for a while, plotting her escape with Brad. She'd been sneaking around, lying to me, building a life with him while I was completely blind to it. But now, the game had changed. Now, I could see the board clearly. I wasn't about to confront them, at least, not yet. That would be too easy. I wasn't interested in a simple argument or even a heated fight. What I wanted, what I needed, was something more. I needed them to understand the cost of their actions. The first thing I did was change my approach. I wasn't just going to chase them down and make a scene. No, I needed to get under their skin, to make them paranoid. I needed to let them feel the weight of their own guilt, to make them second-guess every decision they'd made up to this point. I started small, little things that would make them question whether they were safe. I began following Brad more closely, keeping an eye on his movements, learning his routines. I watched him like a hawk, never letting him out of my sight for long. He had no idea I was doing this, of course. I was careful. I knew how to stay hidden in plain sight. Brad's life was easy to infiltrate. He was predictable. I knew where he ate, where he went for lunch, when he went to the gym, and when he took his evening jogs. I even knew when he went to sleep and woke up. But what I really needed to know was Katherine's routine. What she did when she wasn't with me. What she did when she was with him. I spent the next few days shadowing her. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop myself from wanting answers. I needed to know what they were doing, how deep this had gone. I wasn't just looking for confirmation anymore. I was looking for weakness. I found her at the coffee shop one morning, sitting with Brad, her face lit up with that smile she used to give me. The one that made my heart race. But now, it made my blood boil. Seeing her so comfortable, so relaxed with him, felt like a slap in the face. And seeing Brad look at her the way he used to look at his own wife, it made my stomach turn. They didn't see me at first. But I saw them. Every movement, every laugh, every subtle touch between them. I watched as Brad reached across the table and brushed her hand, a gesture that once would have been reserved for me. The old feeling of betrayal surged within me, stronger this time, colder. But I didn't act on it. Not yet. Instead, I stayed back, watching them, recording everything. I pulled my phone from my pocket and snapped a few pictures from a distance. I wasn't sure why I did it. Maybe it was for the memories, for later. Or maybe it was to remind myself that I wasn't weak. I wasn't powerless. I was going to take control of this situation. The next day, I made sure Brad saw those pictures. I didn't confront him directly. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, I found a way to make sure he knew I had them. It was simple. I sent him an anonymous email, with no subject line, just the pictures attached. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I knew he would understand. He would know what I was doing. And the anxiety would begin to eat away at him. The first response came a few hours later. It was just a text. "What do you want from me?" That's all it said. I could feel the tension in the message, the fear seeping through his words. He wasn't going to make this easy. He was already starting to crack. I knew I had him right where I wanted him. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted him to stew in his own guilt, to wonder what would come next. The waiting would eat away at him. It was already starting to. Every time he checked his phone, he'd wonder if there was more. Every time he saw something suspicious, every time he thought he was being watched, he'd be right. And I would be there, always one step ahead. I focused my attention on Katherine, too. I didn't need to stalk her the same way I did Brad. She wasn't the one who was still pretending, still trying to hide behind a mask. She was the one who had already made her choice. But I needed her to feel the pressure. I needed her to see the consequences of her actions, too. One evening, I called her. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Hello." Her voice was soft, tired. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you?" I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear her breathing, steady but hesitant. "What are you talking about?" "You and Brad," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "I saw you two together. I have pictures. I know everything." She didn't respond immediately. I could hear the slight tremble in her breath as she processed the words. "Jonathan, please. You think this is just going to go away? You think I'm just going to let you walk away from this? From me? From what we had?" I was starting to lose the calm. The anger was slipping out, and I didn't try to stop it. "You think I'm just going to sit here and let you and him tear my life apart? I'll make sure you both pay." She didn't speak again. Not a single word. I could hear her on the other end, silent, probably trying to find the right thing to say. But I didn't give her the chance. I hung up. The silence felt satisfying. I had started something now, and I wasn't going to stop until I had what I deserved. The game of shadows had begun. And this time, there would be no mercy. The days blurred into each other as I tightened my grip on Brad and Katherine. I was careful, methodical, making sure every move was calculated, every step precise. It was no longer about the immediate confrontation. No, that would come later. What mattered now was the slow, suffocating pressure, building and building until it crushed them. Brad was the first to crack. He'd never been particularly good at hiding his emotions, and now, his paranoia was evident. Every time I crossed his path, I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't the calm, confident man I used to know. He was jumpy, uncertain, like a rat trapped in a corner. He'd glance over his shoulder, as if expecting to see me lurking there, watching his every move. I kept my distance, just enough to let him feel the weight of my presence. But I didn't act right away. I didn't need to. The fear was doing its job. It was slowly chipping away at him. One afternoon, I saw him at a bar. He was sitting alone, nursing a whiskey in his hand, his eyes darting around the room like he was waiting for something, or someone. I watched him for a while, savoring the sight. This was the man who had taken everything from me. The man who had lied to me, betrayed me. And now, he was falling apart. I walked up to the bar, taking a seat 2 stools down from him. I didn't acknowledge him at first. I just ordered a drink, settling in and pretending to mind my own business. But I could feel him tense when he realized I was there. "Jonathan," he said, his voice tight. I took my time responding, savoring the moment. "Brad." He didn't say anything else at first. Instead, he took another long sip of his drink, his hands shaking slightly as he did. It was a subtle movement, but I saw it. He was unraveling, and it was beautiful. "How's everything going?" I asked casually, as if I wasn't the man who had just sent him into a spiral of fear and guilt. Brad's eyes flicked to me, then away. "It's fine," he said, his voice strained. "Everything's fine." I could see he was lying. His words were hollow, and his face betrayed the fear that was creeping in. It was almost too easy. I leaned back in my seat, staring at him. "You know, Brad, you never were a very good liar." He stiffened at my words, but he tried to cover it with a chuckle. "You've got a weird way of keeping in touch, man. Sending anonymous emails, pictures, what is this, a game to you?" "Is it?" I asked. My tone was calm, almost bored, but underneath it, I could feel the anger bubbling up. The desire to destroy him. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Brad's gaze darted around the bar, like he was trying to find an escape. But there was nowhere to go. He knew it. I knew it. The tension between us thickened, like a wire stretched taut, ready to snap at any moment. "You've been avoiding me," I said softly. "I don't blame you. But you can't run forever, Brad. Not from me. Not from what you've done." He flinched, the words hitting him harder than I expected. His eyes flashed with anger, but there was fear there too. And that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted him to fear me. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, the burden of the guilt. "You think this is over?" I continued, leaning in slightly. "You think you can just walk away from everything and go on with your life like nothing happened?" Brad didn't answer. Instead, he set his drink down, his hands trembling, and stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet bar. "I don't know what you want from me, man," he muttered, his voice thick with frustration. "I'm not going to play whatever game this is. Just, leave me alone." But I wasn't going to let him leave so easily. "You're not walking away, Brad," I said, my voice low, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken threats. "You're not getting off that easily." Brad's face turned pale, his jaw clenched tight. But he didn't say another word. He turned and walked out of the bar, his footsteps hurried, his body stiff with fear. I sat there for a moment, watching the door close behind him. The satisfaction of seeing him crumble was brief, but it was enough. He was scared. He knew the game was on, and he was losing. The next step was Katherine. She wasn't as easy to crack as Brad. She'd always been the more composed one, the one who could hide her emotions behind that calm, collected exterior. But she had made a grave mistake, and now it was time to make her pay for it. I waited until the evening before I decided to confront her. I wasn't going to let her off the hook like I had with Brad. She deserved to feel the same suffocating pressure he was under. She needed to understand that no one could betray me without facing the consequences. I found her at the same cafe she and Brad had been to that morning, sitting at a corner table, sipping a cup of coffee and flipping through a magazine. She looked so normal, so innocent, but I knew better now. I knew exactly what she was capable of. I walked in, keeping my distance at first, watching her for a moment before I approached. She didn't see me coming. But when I slid into the seat across from her, her eyes widened. For a split second, I saw the fear flash in her eyes. She wasn't prepared for this. She thought she had gotten away with it. But now, I was here. "Katherine," I said, my voice calm, controlled, but with an edge that made her look uneasy. "We need to talk." She set her coffee cup down slowly, her fingers trembling. "Jonathan. I didn't expect to see you here." "Didn't you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because I think you knew this moment was coming. You knew there would be a reckoning." Her face paled, and she shifted in her seat. "I don't know what you want from me." "I've already told you." "No," I interrupted, my voice suddenly sharp. "You've told me nothing. You've been lying to me for months, Katherine. And I'm done playing nice." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She didn't know how to spin this anymore. She didn't have an answer. "I want you to understand something," I said, leaning forward. "You and Brad, everything you've done. It's not going away. It's not going to be swept under the rug like you think. You both think you can just walk away from this. But you can't. Not anymore." Her eyes flickered with something close to panic, but she didn't speak. "I want you to feel the same pressure that Brad's feeling. I want you to understand that there are consequences for everything. You don't get to ruin my life without facing the fallout." She sat there, her lips trembling, but still no words came. I could see her struggling with the guilt, the realization that she was trapped, that there was no easy way out anymore. "And Katherine?" I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "I'm not finished yet." I stood up and left the cafe without looking back. The game was far from over, and now the pressure was on both of them. And this time, there would be no escape. The days dragged on, the tension mounting with each passing moment. Brad's paranoia was at its peak. He avoided me whenever he could, his every move watched, calculated. I could see the change in him, his sharpness was gone, his confidence shattered. He was a man on the edge, and that's exactly where I wanted him. Katherine, on the other hand, was more complicated. She put on the facade of a woman who had nothing to fear. She still went about her life like everything was normal, as though I was a ghost haunting her past. But I knew better. I could see the cracks beneath the surface, the way she flinched when I entered a room, the hesitation in her voice when we spoke. She was far from being at peace with her choices. I had a plan, though, and everything was falling into place. I had to make her feel like she had nowhere to hide. She needed to know that no matter how far she ran, there was always something waiting for her to pay. I didn't need to confront her yet. That would come soon enough. What I needed was to make her question everything. Her life, her choices, her future with Brad. So I started digging deeper. I knew that Katherine had a few private accounts she kept hidden, places where she'd store her secrets. It wasn't hard to figure out the passwords, we'd been together long enough for me to know what she would use. I didn't hesitate. I dove into her emails, her messages, her bank transactions. Every detail, every interaction was a piece of the puzzle, and I needed them all. It didn't take long before I found the message that would change everything. A simple text from Brad, nothing that could immediately suggest anything was amiss. But the tone, the words. It was clear they were planning something. The message was about a trip they'd been planning for weeks, a getaway. A romantic escape, far from the prying eyes of their lives. It was perfect. I had the information I needed to break them. The weekend arrived, and I made sure to keep a close eye on Brad. I followed him when he left for work, when he stopped for his usual coffee. He was jumpy, his eyes darting around as if expecting me to be lurking behind every corner. And that was exactly how I wanted him to feel. Vulnerable. Exposed. I knew he had arranged to meet Katherine at a hotel later that night. They'd been exchanging messages, planning this secret rendezvous. I didn't want to just show up unannounced, though. I wanted to make sure they felt the weight of the situation before I revealed myself. I needed to make them question everything. I slipped into the hotel lobby unnoticed, blending in with the crowd. The place was upscale, too classy for them to think I'd follow them here. The valet opened the door for me, and I stepped inside, watching from the corner as Brad approached the front desk. He was smiling, his posture stiff, nervous. He clearly hadn't seen me yet, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew I was out there, lurking in the shadows. He just didn't know when the hammer would fall. I made my way to the lobby bar, ordering a drink and sitting in the corner, waiting. I could see Brad texting Katherine, his fingers moving quickly on his phone. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see his fingers tap out each word with precision, as if he had rehearsed it 1,000 times. He was nervous, but he was still playing the game. I waited. I didn't need to rush this. The moment would come when I would make my presence known, when the entire room would watch as I delivered the final blow. An hour passed. I could feel the tension building between us. I didn't need to rush them. They were already here. I would wait until they were settled, until they thought they were safe. Finally, I saw Katherine walk into the lobby, looking just as beautiful as ever, but with a different kind of energy in her movements. She wasn't the confident woman I had once known. She was tense, unsure of herself, and it was clear that she was caught in the act. She looked for Brad, and when she saw him, her face lit up with that familiar, yet now irritating smile. But I wasn't going to let them have that moment. Not without consequences. I stood up from the bar, slipping through the crowd and toward the elevator. I pushed the button to the top floor, where they were waiting. I didn't need to rush. I knew where they were, I knew what they were doing, and now it was time to confront them. As I approached the suite, I heard their laughter. It was so out of place, too carefree, too free of the guilt that should have been eating them alive. I stood outside the door for a moment, my hand on the knob, my heart pounding. I wasn't scared anymore. I was in control. I pushed the door open slowly. They froze. Katherine was standing by the window, her back to me. Brad was seated on the couch, and when they saw me, they both turned with identical expressions of shock. "Jonathan," Katherine said, her voice a mix of surprise and fear. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I just looked at them. Their faces, the way their bodies stiffened as they realized the game was over. They had no idea how close I had gotten to them. They had no idea how far I was willing to go. "You really thought you could get away with it?" I asked, my voice cold, controlled. "You thought you could just leave me, destroy everything we had, and there wouldn't be any consequences?" Brad stood up, his hands held out in a placating gesture. "Jonathan, listen, this isn't what you think." But I wasn't interested in hearing him anymore. He wasn't going to talk his way out of this. "No," I said, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear it." I stepped into the room, my eyes never leaving their faces. The air was thick with tension, and I could see the cracks starting to show. Katherine looked terrified now, her hands trembling. Brad, on the other hand, was trying to maintain his calm, but I could see the sweat on his forehead, the way his gaze flickered toward the door, looking for an escape. But there was no escape this time. "This ends now," I said. "The lies. The deceit. You two thought you could just walk away from the damage you caused. But I'm here to tell you, you're not walking away from anything." Katherine opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand to silence her. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You both made your choices. And now you'll both pay for them." I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. Brad, you were my friend. You were family. But now, you're just a coward. And Katherine, I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. You were the woman I loved. The woman I trusted. And you betrayed me. I could see the fear in their eyes now. They knew the game was up. And now, I was going to make them feel every bit of it. I didn't say another word as I turned and walked out of the suite, leaving them there to stew in the mess they'd made. But as I left, I knew one thing for certain, this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The days following that night were like something out of a nightmare. Brad and Katherine thought they could go back to their normal lives, pretend everything was fine. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let them forget it. I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I had left them in that hotel room with the weight of their actions crashing down on them, but I could feel their fear. The silence was loud. They weren't going to sleep easily. I had made sure of that. And I wasn't going to make it easy for them to move on from this. The revenge I sought wasn't just about confronting them. It was about leaving them broken, desperate, wondering if they'd ever escape the consequences. I started with Brad. The man had been avoiding me like a plague. He couldn't look me in the eye, couldn't sit still without jumping at shadows. Every time I crossed his path, I could see the panic in his eyes, the constant fear that I was lurking, ready to strike again. I could hear his nervous chatter when we ran into each other, the way he fumbled through words, trying to act like everything was okay. But it wasn't. One afternoon, I knew he'd be alone in the office. The law firm he worked at had a big case coming up, and he was too focused on work to realize I was already inside. I knew the layout of the place, the back door, the side hallways, everything. This wasn't the first time I had visited, and it wouldn't be the last. I waited for the perfect moment, just as his assistant walked out of the office to grab lunch. That's when I slipped inside. Brad looked up when the door opened. His face drained of color when he saw me standing there, calm and collected, a stark contrast to the chaos that was unfolding inside him. "Jonathan, what the hell are you doing here?" He tried to mask his surprise with anger, but I saw through it. The man was a mess. And I was the one who had made him that way. I closed the door behind me, locking it. No interruptions, no escape. "Sit down, Brad," I said, my voice low, but firm. "We need to talk." He hesitated for a second, then reluctantly sank into the chair behind his desk. His hands were trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. It was almost pathetic. The great Brad Collins, reduced to a nervous wreck in front of me. I let him stew in silence for a moment. The tension between us was suffocating, and I loved every second of it. "I've been thinking about everything," I said, finally breaking the silence. "You and Katherine. You've ruined everything. You took everything from me, my trust, my love, my marriage. And you thought you could just walk away from it, like it didn't matter. But I'm here to tell you, Brad, that this doesn't end until I'm satisfied. And you're far from satisfying me." Brad tried to speak, to argue, but I wasn't interested in listening. "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. Not anymore." I stepped closer, leaning on his desk. The power in the room shifted. I wasn't the man who had been betrayed. I was the man in control now, and he could feel it. I saw the realization flicker in his eyes. "You were never a good friend, Brad. You were always more about yourself. Always willing to sacrifice others for your own gain. But you crossed a line with me. You crossed a line that I'm not going to let you forget. You thought you could just break my world and move on. You're wrong. You're going to feel this for a long time." I paused, letting the silence weigh on him. I could see the sweat on his brow, the way his breath had quickened. The truth was, he was scared. Scared of what I might do next, scared that he'd finally realized how deep this went. "You've already lost," I said, my voice cold and matter-of-fact. You're not going to fix this. Not with words. Not with apologies. You can't undo what you've done. Brad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting to the door. He was looking for a way out, but there was no escape. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. Where's Katherine? I asked, my voice suddenly sharp. Is she still playing the part of the perfect little wife? Is she hiding behind that fake smile, pretending that none of this matters? Brad didn't answer right away. But I didn't need him to. His silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. He knew the truth, and he couldn't run from it. Tell her this, I said, turning to leave. The game's not over. It's just beginning. I didn't wait for his response as I walked out of the office. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, but I didn't care. I wasn't done with him. And I wasn't done with her either. The next phase of my plan was already set in motion. The confrontation with Brad had been necessary. But now, I had to turn my focus to Katherine. She was the one who had started all of this. She was the one who had betrayed me first, who had allowed Brad to become the man he was in my life. She needed to feel what I was feeling. She needed to see just how far I was willing to go. I kept my distance from her for a few days, letting the tension build. She had no idea what I was planning, and that's exactly how I wanted it. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. No, I wanted her to suffer just like Brad had. I wanted her to feel the pressure mounting, suffocating her every moment. Then, one night, I caught her alone. It was late, around midnight. I knew she'd be in her apartment, trying to unwind after a long day. I wasn't sure if she'd been expecting me, but she wasn't going to have the luxury of being prepared. I rang the doorbell, and after a few moments, the door cracked open. Katherine stood there, looking slightly disheveled. Her eyes were wide with surprise, and she looked taken aback to see me standing there. "Jonathan," she said, her voice shaky. "What are you doing here?" I stepped forward, my presence enough to make her take a step back. The look in her eyes was a mix of confusion and fear. She hadn't been expecting this, not so soon. She didn't know what was coming. "I'm here to make sure you understand what you've done," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. "I'm here to make sure you understand that there are no easy escapes from this." Katherine opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. "I've already been through enough. You've already taken everything from me. But you're not done. You're going to feel the consequences of your actions. And so is Brad." Her face paled, and for a moment, she looked like she might break down. But she stood her ground, trying to look strong, trying to maintain her composure. "I never wanted this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I cut her off. You already did." The silence between us was thick, heavy with everything that had been left unsaid. She was trapped. And she knew it. "You're going to feel this, Katherine," I said. "I'm not done with you. Not by a long shot." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The fear in her eyes was enough. I turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving her standing there. She had no idea what was coming next. But I did. And this time, there would be no mercy. The silence after my confrontation with Katherine hung thick in the air, but I knew this was it, the moment I had been waiting for. This wasn't just about making them pay anymore. It was about finishing what I had started. This was the end game. I had come too far to stop now. Brad and Katherine thought they could escape the consequences of their betrayal. They thought the worst was over. But they had no idea what I had planned next. I wasn't going to let them off easy. No, I would make sure they both felt the full weight of their actions. The next few days were spent preparing. I kept my distance, making sure not to reveal too much. But I wasn't idle. I had one last move to make. One final push to make them realize the depths of their mistakes. I had gone through their lives, their routines, their secrets. I had everything I needed. I had pieces of their past, things they thought were safe, things they thought no one would ever find. It was all in place. I had the perfect setup, and I was ready to pull the trigger. The day arrived. It was a Thursday, around 5 p.m. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the city streets. I knew this was the right time, right when they'd be vulnerable, thinking they were safe. I had orchestrated this carefully. Every step was calculated. I knew where Brad would be. I knew where Katherine would be. And more importantly, I knew what they would be doing. The trap was set. I arrived at the location first, making sure to blend in with the crowd. A simple coffee shop near the office, nothing fancy, nothing too out of place. I took a seat near the back, my eyes scanning the room as I waited. I watched the clock tick closer to the time I had set. Every second felt like an eternity, but I wasn't nervous. I was calm, collected, and in control. When Brad walked in, he didn't see me at first. He was too focused on his phone, tapping away at a message. I couldn't help but smile. It was almost too easy. He was so distracted, so wrapped up in his own guilt and anxiety that he didn't even notice me. I watched him sit at the counter, ordering a drink, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. He was paranoid, as he should be. He was already feeling the pressure. But I wasn't going to strike yet. I needed him to sweat a little longer. Then, Katherine walked in. She was alone, just like I had predicted. She glanced around the room, and when she saw Brad, she smiled. It was a weak smile, a nervous smile, and it made something inside me burn with rage. How could she act so calm? How could she pretend like everything was okay? I knew this was the moment. I stood up and walked toward them. They still didn't see me until I was right there, standing in front of them. Brad's face dropped when he saw me, his eyes widening with surprise. Katherine froze mid-sentence, her smile faltering as she realized what was happening. "What the hell are you doing here, Jonathan?" Brad asked, his voice sharp, defensive. "I think it's time we finish this," I said, my voice cold, hard. "Time to face the consequences of what you've both done." I didn't give them a chance to speak. I pulled out my phone and turned it toward them. On the screen, a series of pictures of them, taken over the past few weeks. Pictures of their meetings, their secret texts, their private moments together. I had it all. They couldn't deny it. "You thought you could hide, didn't you?" I said, my voice a low growl. "You thought you could go on living your lives while I sat back and did nothing. But now you see, I've been watching. Every move you made. Every lie you told." Katherine's face turned pale, her eyes darting to the pictures. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Brad, on the other hand, was visibly shaking, his hands trembling as he reached for his drink. "You're not getting away with this," I continued. "Neither of you." I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air, thick with tension. They were both caught now, trapped in the web I had spun around them. There was no escape. "You ruined my life," I said, my voice colder than ever. "You destroyed everything I worked for. And now it's my turn to make sure you both pay." Brad stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "What do you want, Jonathan?" he asked, his voice shaking with fear. "What do you want from us?" I looked him dead in the eyes. "I want you to feel the same fear you made me feel. I want you to understand that there are consequences for your actions. You can't just betray someone and think you'll walk away without paying the price." I turned to Katherine, my gaze cold and unforgiving. "And you? You were supposed to be the woman I trusted. The woman I loved. But you turned your back on me. And now, you'll never forget the price of that betrayal." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. No more lies. No more excuses. I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of my words sink in. They were both shaking now, unable to hide the fear in their eyes. They knew they couldn't escape. They knew this was the end of their game. Then, I turned and walked away. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The message had been delivered. The final move had been made. And I was finally free. As I walked out of the coffee shop, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was over. Brad and Katherine would never be the same. They would live with the consequences of their actions, and they would never forget the pain they had caused me. I had taken back control of my life. I had shown them that betrayal comes with a price. And I had made sure they would never forget the day they crossed me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about ensuring that no one, not even the people closest to you, could destroy everything you had worked for without paying the price. The game was over. And I had won.